This is Mike Farrell from MikeFarrellSports.com. Special guest Andrew Zoldan, Ohio State dude. Told me what? What'd you say? Like if you told me a year ago you're going to do a podcast with me or something, you'd freak. But
exactly.
I think I've pretty much lowered myself enough where you don't have to freak. I'm trying to find young people in this industry who want to get better. That's kind of my goal in this next stage of my awesome career. So you're one of those guys. You've been helping me out in many different ways, but we're going to talk Ohio State draft today. We're going to talk Ohio State roster, spring game, all that good stuff. So if you're a Michigan fan, you're going to want to tune into this as well, because you can hate on everything Andrew says. I'll start, and I'm going to start with the draft. You know, it's Thursday. We're used to Ohio State getting 3 or 4 guys. We're used to them getting a cornerback taken in the first round, 3 or 4 guys in the first round usually. This year, it looks like it's going to be the 2 wide receivers. Which one do you like better?
So I think it's a very interesting question to say who do you like better, Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave, because as we know, all that really matters for year one is like, who are these guys' quarterbacks going to be? So if you tell me that next year Chris Olave is going to be with Carson Wentz and the Chiefs are going to go up and draft Garrett Wilson and you got Mahomes with Garrett Wilson, then obviously I'm going to tell you Garrett Wilson. I do think this, though. I think Chris Olave will have more catches and more touchdowns on it as a rookie if all things are even. But I think it's super important where they end up because as we've seen, like Terry McLaurin has been great since he's been in the NFL, but like what are his numbers if he's where Jamar Chase was? You know what I mean? So I just think that's so important.
Yeah, and it's, you know, both of these guys are expected. I mean, you know, I've heard Garrett Wilson possibly 10 to the Jets. That's not a great situation. Obviously, Zach Wilson's in his second year. And that's, you know, could be 10 to the 49ers if the 49ers end up trading Deebo Samuel to the Jets and get that pick. And Trey Lance isn't a great situation either. But this draft is so unpredictable. Olave a little bit later, you know, maybe in the 10 to 20 range. But the way I have them ranked, I have Olave first, and I have Garrett Wilson second, and then Drake London third. So I've got both Ohio State guys, 1, 2 at the top of my wide receiver board, and they're different players. You know, Garrett Wilson to me is Calvin Ridley, you know, a sort of a smooth, excellent route runner, but a guy that also can contort his body, make difficult catches, bad angle footballs, you know, make your quarterback look better. So I think he would be better off, honestly, you know, than Olave going to a bad quarterback or an inaccurate quarterback because he can make some plays. And then Olave, I've got is like a Hunter Renfrow. You just can't cover the guy. And I know people will say, well, Hunter Renfrow was a walk-on and wasn't a high draft pick. Who cares? He's unstoppable. And you give Olave that space, you know, whether it's a slot or outside, he's not going to be covered. So I think Olave is going to go into the better quarterback situation, though. I have Wilson, you know, either Jets or 49ers. And then it's going to be interesting to see the rest of the draft who panics after those first couple wide receivers, because Drake London could go even before Garrett Wilson. And he could end up going, Olave could end up going to 11 to, you know, the Washington Commanders, you know, and partner up with McLaurin, or he could slide all the way, you know, into the 20s, or as you mentioned, the Chiefs could trade up 2 picks and try to get one of these 2 guys. So let's not focus on them, though, because Ohio State has some guys that I don't think are getting any attention. One of them is the offensive tackle, Nick Petit, Freyr, who was a 5-star out of high school. I've got him second round. What have you seen from him as an Ohio State guy that you like, and what does he need to work on?
Yeah, so when I looked at a McShay Kiper mock draft,
You should look at a Farrell mock draft, by the way. Forget those guys. But
well, I always look at the Farrell mock draft, but
it's still in process, as you can tell. So that's my fault.
So you know, you're right on about Petit for going, you know, second round, third round. But I think what's interesting with all these Ohio State guys is like I kind of think this about how there's a million good wide receivers this year. Like, sorry, someone is going to get a bust. It's going to happen. There's not going to be 8, all pro wide receivers in this draft. And if there is, you can clip this and I'll be wrong. But like, I feel like people out there are going to say Ohio State is going to have a miss somewhere. You don't want to be the guy that drafts the miss. But like, all these guys that are being talked about, whether it's Petit, Freyr, like you were talking about, or Ruckert, or then you get a little later with like Thayer, Mumford, Haskell, Garrett. Like, you're getting guys that are ready to compete. Like often you get guys that are coming out of the smaller schools and might have a much bigger upside. But similar to the NBA, when you take like an older guy later for a championship ready team, like if you're a team that is an offensive tackle away or a tight end away, like taking someone from Ohio State is where you get a pro-ready guy right away. He might not be, your record-breaking tight end. He might not be a 10-year all-pro offensive lineman, but like next year, the next 2 or 3 years, you want to win the Super Bowl, like these are your guys to take.
Yeah, and bust-wise, I think out of the 2 wide receivers, if I had to pick one that if I had to, pick one of those 2 guys be a bust, it would be Garrett Wilson. And the reason for that is not talent-wise. I think he's a little bit more talented than Olave, but Olave is more of a technician. He could be a possession receiver. He could be a sideline receiver. He could be a red zone receiver. Wilson can do all that, but there's a little smidge of diva in Garrett Wilson that, experienced out of high school. Now kid's mature, and Olave came back when he didn't have to. So that would be my just hunch that Olave is going to be the guy out of those 2 that has the better career. But you're right. I mean, it's hard to project those guys as busts. And I've got a guy, Tyreek Smith is a boomer bust guy in this draft, and we haven't talked about him yet. But he's going to be probably a 5 to 7 round pick. But Petit Freyr is one of those guys that you're going to see probably maybe start off right tackle, and then move to left, or be a depth guy, and be a good solid contributor as a 2nd or 3rd round pick. And you mentioned Haskell, Garrett, and Thayer Mumford. Mumford is projected probably 3rd round for me. Garrett probably 4th round, maybe late 3rd. He regressed a little bit, but those are solid football players. I think Mumford could play inside or outside. Garrett obviously is a sawed-off guy, but he's a 3 tech. I guess Jeremy Ruckert would be the other one that could be a bust. Talented kid, but never really was able to put it all together there, and that's because they had 8 wide receivers who caught passes.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. It's like Ruckert's the guy that has really benefited from the Senior Bowl and the combines and he did go to Ohio State. They had a crowded wide receiver room. Like, he's the guy that like wouldn't surprise you if you're not an Ohio State quote unquote fan, if he ends up being an absolute stud from this draft. But like last year, for example, Jordan Fuller, all right, 199th pick. I don't know if I don't remember exactly, but I don't think he was a Pro Bowler, but he was named a team captain, like 2 years ago. Sorry. Like, those are guys that like, they get the Ohio State bump. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to take a guy maybe 10 picks, 15 picks earlier than his projection because, last time you took an Ohio State player, Ryan Day told you he was going to be good. And now he's your starting defensive lineman and you didn't expect it. So like, those guys just get like the pedigree bump over like, let's say there's a guy from Rutgers that has, tremendous upside. You're like, well, do I want to take the safe Rutgers pick or do I want to, have a good chance of hitting a home run with an Ohio State pick?
Yeah, unless you're Bill Belichick, he'll take the Rutgers guy 10 times out of 10, and he's kind of smart. So, there is a pedigree that comes with it. The Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Georgias of the world that produce NFL players year after year. And there's busts and there's booms and all that good stuff. And it's really impossible to project. I got Ruckert as a 3rd rounder. It's not a great tight end draft. So he'll put, probably 4th tight end, 3rd tight end. The first one won't come off until the second round, and it really depends on, what flavor of ice cream you like as a scout. And that's how it is with this entire draft. It's an absolute nightmare to try to project because of the quarterbacks, because there's no quarterback situation that's really solid. So you're going to have a lot of people trading back, a lot of people maybe trading in to get Malik Willis. And so, you're going to see some surprises from these Ohio State guys. We know Garrett Wilson is going to go 1. It wouldn't stun me to see Olave slide out of round 1. It also wouldn't stun me to see somebody take him in the top 10 who absolutely loves his overall skill set. Petit Freyr is going to go 2nd round, could slide to 3rd, and Rucker 3rd, and then these other guys in the mid. But the funny thing about this, right? I'm not an Ohio State fan. I'm not a fan of any program. Couldn't care less who wins, does what, right? But man, this is a pretty good Ohio State team. I know they got beat by Michigan, but to have so few draft choices, potential draft choices, is very rare for them. And that's why I have them, going to the playoff and not winning, but, battling for the national championship with Alabama this year, because this roster is ridiculous. CJ Stroud we'll talk about first. Number 1 pick overall, 2023, potentially. Just amazing accuracy. And this is a guy who almost didn't win the job.
Yeah. My question that I keep asking people and that keeps coming to my mind is is CJ Stroud the number 1 pick in this year's draft if he was able to come out this year? Are teams trying as hard as they can to get up to number 1, or maybe the Jags don't want to trade number 1. They, someone trades up to number 2. If he was in this draft right now, I think teams, him, Bryce Young, both of them, teams are all over it. And I think what I really like about CJ Stroud and what I really like about the team for next year is I don't think any of these guys are going to regress. Sam Howell, for example, lost a lot of weapons and went from, at the beginning of last season, this guy could be the number 1 pick, to we'll see if this guy gets, drafted in the first few rounds. But there's just no real drop off weapon wise, which is what people are thinking, where Stroud is going to be incredible next year. He's a Heisman favorite, if not this second, should be by the time the season rolls around next year. And they do have a decently favorable schedule. And like you were saying, I think he's going to put up crazy, better than Justin Fields numbers, because I don't think there'll be as many blowouts as when Fields was on the team. And
it's impossible to stop them. And, I think the one thing that might help him, as opposed to this past season, is the defense is going to be much better. So he'll have more opportunities. You won't have the defense on the field. Now, again, that goes 2 ways. You could have a shootout, which is great for quarterback numbers, or you could have a defense that shuts teams down and gives you more opportunities for the football. So, but if there are those blowouts, then he's going to sit and Kyle McCord's going to get the time. And I don't think anybody in the NFL cares about his stats. Right now he's the favorite for the Heisman, just slightly over Bryce Young. He's the favorite for the number 1 pick, slightly over Bryce Young. He's 6'3". Bryce Young's 5'11". That's the difference right now. But this roster, Jackson Smith and Jigba is wide receiver number 1 to most everybody, including me, in college football. I've got Paris Johnson as one of the top tackles in all of college football for next season. And I'm not even talking about the younger guys. I'm not even going to talk about Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka. Those guys aren't even, Travion Henderson. Those aren't even eligible for the draft until 2024. And then on defense, you've got some guys that are going to step up. And the scary part about this is what I'm looking at is Ohio State's going to have probably 3 first-rounders next year. They could have 6, 7 in 2024. I guess I am going to talk about these guys because I lied. Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, JT Tuimalau, Jack Sawyer, Denzel Burke, Kyle McCord, on and on it goes. 2024 is going to be absolutely insane for these guys too. So if the Buckeyes don't win a national championship in the next 2 years, it will be because of Alabama. And that's the only reason. I don't think anybody else can hang with them from a depth and talent perspective.
I agree with you. And they have the luxury of hey, your toughest non-con game on the schedule next year, Notre Dame at home, head coach's first game ever in the regular season for Notre Dame on the road at Ohio State. Like it's like you're kind. I think next year is the year to do it. Obviously, all those guys you just named that are draft eligible in 2024 are going to take even another step the next year. But like we saw the early struggles of Stroud taking over last year, which nothing is for sure. That's not for sure. And what I mean by that is like, you know what you're getting in Stroud next year. You don't know exactly what the quarterback room could be 2 years from now. So I think next year is definitely the year to win it because this is all speculation. I know nothing. Like if Henderson's incredible next year, how do you just like come back and do it again? Like, you know, you always, the last 2 years were weird where guys like, I'm not going to say he's going to opt out or anything like that because that would be crazy. But like,
I'll say it.
If you have an incredible second year and you play yourself into a top 15 draft pick, like we're going to start seeing guys who hold themselves out their third year.
The running back position is not, you know, it's not a first round coveted deal. You know, Najee Harris obviously went in the 20s and he's great. You know, the Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, you know, top 10 picks, you know, Zeke Elliott, you know, Saquon Barkley, these guys, all high draft picks, you know, they're good and then they wear down or they get injured. So a running back won't have the luxury of opting out, you know, but, you know, Travion Henderson, if he has a great year next year and a great year the following year, certainly could be that guy that, you know, breaks the mold and gets back into the top 10, but you will see others do it. I mean, you know, essentially Nick Bosa opted out. And I know people are going to say, well, he had an injury, blah, blah. You know, listen, he shut it down and I get it. It makes sense. And there are other guys, you know, I mean, Jadeveon Clowney mailed in his junior year. You know, others opted out because of COVID, but when you see the success of these guys, the Penei Sewells and especially the Micah Parsons of the world that sit out a season, the NFL doesn't care. They're like, okay, this kid missed a year of college football, but look at him. He's unbelievable. So that's the other part. You're going to see a lot of guys opting out eventually. Right now it's opting out of bowl games, you know, and obviously Jalen Smith had a lot to do with that when he got injured as a top 5 pick who dropped to the second round. But you're going to see opting out of seasons. You're going to see NIL lawsuits. You're going to see the transfer portal blow up even more. You're going to see strikes. You're going to see player strikes against their own team because the locker room's not equal because one guy's making 11 million and no one else is making close to that. It's a mess. And I think in 2 years, 2024 draft is going to be very, very different than what we see here in 2022. So before we wrap this up, I want to talk about the spring game a little bit. You know, this is interesting to me. So Julian Fleming is on this roster and he got talked out of transferring last year. You know, and you've got Harrison, you've got Egbuka, you've got Smith and Jigba, you've got Jaden Ballard, you just got so many weapons. You know, that they had to move G. Scott to tight end. I'm curious to see if there's anybody you think could jump in the portal after that spring game.
I don't know if there's necessarily anyone that I think will jump in the portal just because it's pretty rare. And I know we're new in the Ohio State. Sorry, we're not in the new Ohio State area. We're pretty new in the crazy portal era. Like, I feel like a lot of these, you know, big pedigree schools keep guys. I think something you might see is like a guy like Mayan Williams, who like Travion Henderson's going to be the guy, but you also got Evan Pryor, who's unbelievable. You know, is Mayan Williams the odd man out there? Or does Evan Pryor show a ton of stuff early on in the season, but sorry, Travion Henderson's coming back for his third year. Like, you're not the bell cow. So I think that is the transfer portal era that we're going into, which is potential stars wanting to star more than maybe stars wanting to take the next step, if that makes sense. Like, I think it's more likely that, a 4 or 5 star goes to a new school than like a 3-star who's not really sticking on. It's like, hey, stick on at Ohio State versus maybe having to start over versus a guy that's like, you can actually go to Oklahoma right now and be their starting running back or be the second, third string guy here. So I think the crowded wide receiver and running back rooms are definitely going to pop up this year, but it is football. So like, injuries do happen, and you never know. But I say the most crowded areas are, like you said, the wide receiver room and the running back room. And you'll have a little more insight into this than me because you're more in the portal knowledge. If you're not following Farrell portal, I don't know what you're doing. But I think
It's a nightmare.
I think you could see a running back, because when you have a good running back, he gets every single carry. Like, that's how you lean on a guy and win a national championship. Yes, there's schools that have 2-3 guys, but like, if you're not that second guy, if you're not that first guy, go be it somewhere else.
Yeah, and Alabama has had 17 players since August 1st jump into the portal. Now, none of them are stars. And I think that's the key really here. Ajay Hall isn't a star, and he got suspended twice, but there's other guys that were depth players that just, the roster's so talented that there just wasn't going to be an opportunity for them, whether they were a freshman or a junior, and they jumped in. But Alabama has not been hurt by it. So to your point, Ohio State, which is obviously, one of these NFL level college football teams, you'd expect the big stars there. What I'm going to be curious about is this. NIL is going to be fine for Ohio State. They've got a great fan base. They've got great boosters. They got great alumni. You could be a star. You're on TV all the time. But the lure of the Southeast for some of these guys is going to be intriguing to me because, a lot of these guys are locals. And I'm talking about the Caden Currys, the CJ Hicks, Gabe Powers, Sonny Styles, those guys who are young guys on the roster, very young, obviously, incoming freshmen, who are going to be tempted, not all of them, to maybe go to an SEC school like Georgia or Alabama. If there's an opportunity, let's say, the linebacker room at Alabama becomes depleted, not depleted, but they need a guy. We saw what they did to get Henry Tuoto. We saw how aggressive that was. And then you've got guys like Hicks and Powers and, waiting their turn to potentially play. Will they jump? So I don't know. It's intriguing to me to follow the transfer portal for these big teams because they usually get them. Like Tanner McAllister is a big get for them. But we got to remember, they lost a couple of talented guys to Texas. Quinn Ewers obviously being the headliner there, and Watts, because of NIL, because those guys were Texas players going back home. So these Ohio guys, these local guys, these Midwest guys probably stay, but maybe a guy from Florida comes up, doesn't get to play as much immediately and just jumps. I don't know. It's a mess. The whole thing's a mess. Yeah. You got to follow at Farrell portal because it's right today. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy. Like, this is the week. Okay, we're heading into the draft. Spring games are over. And now is the time where, post-spring depth charts come out. And kids are just jumping in like crazy. I think we had probably 45 kids jump in today. We had 4 Virginia Tech Hokies. And this is all how it's processed by the NCAA, remember. This isn't immediate. So those guys might have jumped in, last Friday, and it got processed today on Monday. So this whole week's going to be a nightmare for us, but it's going to be great for you to follow at Farrell Portal. Follow me at mfarrell sports on Twitter, at mfarrell sports on Instagram, at Mike Farrell Sports on YouTube. I don't know what else. I got a lot. You could drop your handles and if Ohio State fans want to give you a shout out for the love you've given them today, they can do that.
Yeah, so I'm not entering the fan portal anytime soon. I'm a Mizzou and Ohio State fan. One's a little better at football. Let the listeners decide which one that is. but you can follow me at Andrew Zoldan and follow, mine and my co-host Joey's Ohio State show at Drive the Lane Pod. Talk a lot of basketball, but a little football as well. And Mike, we're definitely going to get you on come football season.
Yeah, and I don't want to hear any of you guys at Ohio State, any Ohio State fans. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to hear Alabama fans. I don't want to hear Georgia fans. I don't want to hear any of you bitch about recruiting ever. And when Urban Meyer was there were Ohio State fans who bitched at times. Oh, we didn't close out on this guy. We didn't close on that guy. Now that Ryan Day's there, recruiting is level or better, and there's Ohio State fans bitching and moaning. You be a Rutgers fan, be a Mizzou football fan. Try it for a week, come back to Ohio State, and then realize how good you've got it. So that's my message to all the Ohio State fans. I've got you going to the championship game. The problem is that this year, Alabama is angry and more loaded than last season, I believe, overall, with the additions of Jermaine Burton, Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously Bryce Young coming back, Will Anderson, Dallas Turner. That's nasty. So I've got Ohio State finishing second, not first. So I appreciate everybody's time. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's free. I just have a pathetic amount of subscribers right now, so I want it to up. And I've had people actually tell me, I'm going to wait till you get more. Like, it's free. You just click a button. Idiots. So please do that for me. And again, follow all our handles that we just dropped there. I appreciate your time. You have now, what? It's a bucket list thing, right? You got on a podcast with me. Wow. And like 20 people are going to see it. Whoopie-doo.
Huge bucket lister. If I do my job for you, then maybe 40 people will listen to it.
Well, and we are going to talk about that because I have a challenge for you of 5 things that I want you to do. And I'll probably text you that later tonight. Thanks for being on, and I appreciate your time.
You got it. Thanks, man.